I'm Tony Marfione, and welcome to the first edition to the Microtech Blade and Board. We're going to take you into an in-depth look of some awesome family recipes, some great stories, good cuisine, kitchen knives, some laughs. Stay tuned. Today on our first edition, I'm going to talk a little bit about my family history on my mother's side. You know, as we grew up, our family came up with all kinds of crazy dishes. You know, some of it might not be accurate for, you know, Italian dishes. Some of it they consider to be just a ghetto dish or even you know, just kind of a pirated dish that they learned over the years. You know, this was the type of cuisines that they made at family gatherings and throughout the years. You know, it's something that my grandfather and his people did. But, you know, the typical old spaghetti and meatballs, you know, I've traveled all over Italy, and some of these dishes might not be exactly 100% traditional, but these were my family's recipes, so I'm going to bring them to you today. This was a dish that my mother and her family did constantly, and we just called it, it was dubbed the sauce. So we're going to get started here in just a few minutes, and I'm going to take you through a little bit of, again, family history and also some of my memories. So here we go. We're going to get started right away. So I want to just start out by going over some of the ingredients. Of course, vine-ripe tomatoes. I also cut it. This is a little something in my edition. It's called a sugar bomb, which is an amazing small tomato that adds a little bit of flavor. Of course, some fresh parsley, fresh garlic, a little bit of the Cento products, which is a puree and a crushed organic. And then, you know, a couple different ways that I've, you know, seen my family or, you know, my aunts and uncles always made it a little bit differently. Sometimes I cut it with a little red wine, but I could do the meats a bunch of different ways, and I have. I've used everything from veal to lamb to pork to deer meat, you name it. So there's a bunch of different ways that I've experimented in making this dish, but I'm going to try to replicate it as close to my, you know, what my mother used to do. Of course, I'll add or denote the little things that I've learned how to do over the course of some time. So we're just going to start out by doing some prep here. And what better than the garlic? So fresh garlic is always a great thing. You know, you could use garlic powder if you're in a hurry, or crushed garlic, but I always like to use fresh. And the reason being for that is we're going to get into the sauteed garlic because it's part of the, you know, I make a meatball, and that's one of the main ingredients is a garlic that's been sauteed over nice and brown. So we're going to go ahead and peel these off. I've seen garlic done a million different ways, and I'm always learning at better ways to get the garlic out of the skins. I've seen people crush it. I've seen all kinds of different things. I'm always looking for advice on popping garlic. So if you got better ways of doing this, let me know. Primary into this particular dish, fresh parsley. You know, just making sure that they're kind of crispy, not limp or wilted or anything along those lines. So biggest thing that I've learned over the course of using the parsley is the prep is definitely you get, what I found is getting all the stems off of these, you know, just getting down to the very basic leaf, because I believe the stems themselves make the taste a little bit bitter. So this probably takes the longest out of everything that we do, because getting these perfectly pulled and then washed very well. A lot of times I'll have family over and want me to make the sauce, and I put them on parsley duty. A lot of times I'll even have my daughter Coraline, she'll come in and she'll do the parsley for Daddy, and also the tomatoes. She's very good in the kitchen, and maybe we'll have her on the show at one time or another helping me cook, but she definitely loves to be in the kitchen and definitely loves to help. You know, back in the day when my mom made this dish, it was very basic. You know, we didn't have a lot of money to get, you know, do exquisite things. So typical hamburger meatballs, you know, whatever she would cut it with, should typically be like, you know, an 80-20, you know, ground chuck or ground beef, whatever she could find. And as you'll see as I go down the line, adding some breadcrumbs, some egg, of course the sauteed fresh garlic, some Parmesan cheese. I make mine just a little bit differently, and I'll show you as I go. I add a little bit of the 5-grain Italian bread, which gives it an unbelievable texture and taste. And this one particular 5-grain bread, I can only find it at Publix. And you know, There's a lot of 5-grain breads out there, Italian breads, but this one here is by far the best, I think anyway. What was also neat throughout the years is my mother had, had her siblings, my uncle, my mother being the youngest out of 5. Her parents passed away. My grandmother and grandfather passed away. I think she was very, very young, probably. I can't remember or have the actual dates of when they passed, but I know that my mother was raised by her siblings. She had an older brother, Joseph, her brother Frank, her sister Angie, and her sister Antoni, and then Aunt Mary, which is still alive. She's still alive today, and my Aunt Angie as well. And it's neat because just imagine like Aunt Mary, I mean, she's just turned 102, and she's been around that long. She's seen the big war, she's seen a lot of history in the lifetime of her years on this planet. So my grandparents, their parents came over from Italy. I'm not exactly 100% sure. I'm trying to get some better information on the history of my family. But my grandfather, Joseph Paris like Paris, France, go figure. And my grandmother, her name was Carmela, came over from, I think it was northern part of Italy. My grandfather earned his citizenship through fighting at the tail end of World War II or World War I, and fought in World War II, was wounded and came home. Had my mother, I think was the last baby out of the batch at that age, and because if my grandfather would have been mortally wounded, I wouldn't be here doing this show today. But I have some, just a few photographs of my grandpa. I never met them, of course. They passed away before I was born. But what was neat is just they migrated over. They lived in Rochester, New York, which, even though I was born in Florida, I spent few years of high school and grade school in Rochester, New York. But all my mother's side of the family lived there, and they still live there to this day. They lived and died there, so, it was very, very interesting. I remember as a kid, our families used to get together for all kinds of during the summer events, winter events, Christmas holidays, stuff like that. I mean, these ladies would cook like, they were like Terminators. They would cook for days. They had their kitchens upstairs, but they also had big kitchens down in the basement, and they would just, for days, they would cook food and prep breads and all kinds of authentic dishes. Half the shit I never would like it. I mean, who liked schmelts, the little fish and all the stuff, although I love that kind of food today. My taste has changed over the years. But all the different traditional dishes that they learned, some of them traditional, some of them not so traditional, some of them, some of them were, morphed over the years. But talking about the food spreads over the course of get-togethers, and that was always a beautiful, neat experience. I wish we did more of that today, but we don't. Yeah, it was amazing to watch these ladies in action. My mom loved 3 things explicitly. She loved cigarettes, coffee, and driving her car. And then she kind of liked to cook too as well, but she was a hoot. All these ladies be down in the basement till all hours of the night, having coffee, cigarettes, talking shit and cooking. And by golly, you could not go into that basement without getting chased out by your ear, because nobody wanted you in the kitchen while they were cooking, for sure, even to steal a snack. So that was like a no-fly zone when we were kids. Uncle Pat, he was awesome, greatest painter on the world, and he fought in the Korean War and managed to survive that horrific war. I don't think my Uncle Frank served in the military. I'm not 100% sure. My Uncle Joe, interesting fella, because he helped raise me a bit, taught me, that family did mostly drywall and plastering and all those other things, but my Uncle Joe was based, I believe, overseas, and he worked in a missile silo. He did, I think it was Persian missiles at the time or whatever that he was based on, doing that sort of work. But that's So we have a lot of our males. My Aunt Tony's husband was a map maker in the military. Very interesting. Died at a very young age. So I never met him either. All right, we're on the downside of the peeling of the garlic, which takes forever and a Sunday to do. We're down to the actual raw pieces, and we're going to go ahead and get that diced up, and then we're going to get it on the stove. A little olive oil goes a long way. Like I said, I like the Bertolli products. They're very, very good. This is, you know, nice and light. Extra virgin olive oil just to saute up this garlic and brown it up really nice. The old wooden spoon. My mother had a collection of these because not only she used these in the kitchen, but she used these to like kick my ass every time I got in any kind of trouble. So a lot of broken wooden spoons throughout the years made me the man I am today, but yeah, the wooden spoons went a long way. That, and I don't know if you guys ever remember the old Mattel plastic tracks sections that you would stick together. Those never broke. I fit 2 of those together. Tell you what, that was a tough one. So basically when you're sauteing the garlic, I mean, just the biggest thing is just not to walk away. You know, these types of dishes like these, burning anything is not going to be in your favor, especially when you're actually cooking the sauce. If it burns on the bottom, it's going to ruin the entire dish. You know, I use the Le Creuset pans because they're heavy duty, they're very thick gauge. I love gas. I hate electric stoves. I can't do it. I can, but I don't. But it distributes the heat a whole lot better, and it's just a matter of just getting a better even distribution on the pans. I've often even heard of people adding sugar or sweetener to their sauces. I don't use any of that sort of thing, but I'll use a sugar bomb, which gives it a little bit, actually pitches up the flavor just a little bit and makes up for that. And I'll use those in a couple different dishes. I just love them because they're sweet and has the same effect. You don't have to overdo it with these either. You know, rinsing your stuff or cleaning your vegetables is very, very important. I wouldn't do it with hot water, but lukewarm water to rinse anything that might be on there, debris, pesticides, or whichever. But, you know, I like to take the garlic up to a nice golden brown, so you get the flavor. But if you don't saute it enough, it's going to overpower the sauce. We are going to go ahead and cut the sauce with a little bit of wine today, and I'm going to use a Camus Vineyards 2017 Special Select. So we're going to sip on that a little bit. I usually like to have a little bit of wine. Normally I like to play a little bit of music while I'm cooking, but you know, having a little bit of having a sip is always really nice. But Camus, you could use any kind of good cab. A Merlot, a cab. Doesn't need to be a $200 bottle of wine. There's a lot of great wines in that $30 to $40 range that you could check out. Check out the Honig. Is very, very good because it's very similar. It's grown in similar soil that the Camus is. As you can see, color's starting to become nice across the board. Italian sausage, mild. The Johnsonville sausage is something that my mother used back in the day. I've tried gourmet sausages, handmade sausages, everything else. I like this one. And this is the one we're going to use today. You can only find it at Ingles, it seems like. So we're going to do a pork base on this one here. I'm going to go ahead and cut the sauce with the, I'm going to do like a pork loin or a baby back rib that I'll cut up, and I'll go ahead and sear those up and put them into the sauce as well. So it'll be the meatball base with the pork rib and the sausage. It comes out so good. The meat is incredible. All right. Go ahead and get this pork ready. It's going to be so yummy. Tell you what, having sharp knives in the kitchen, extremely crucial. You know, for my little time in the kitchen over the last 30 years, just having sharp knives is makes it a very good experience. Nothing like having to saw through stuff, especially when you're dicing or doing parsley or garlic or dicing. Really makes a huge difference. So apparently this dish that I'm making originated from my grandfather's side. As I was told, like I said, I don't know all the facts, but my grandfather would make a, as they called it, their peasant dish or whatever they would make. It was easy to do, it was nice, and it could, again, be cut with just about anything. You know, in the next episode that I'm going to be doing, I'm going to be talking about my father's side of the family, which is a totally different methodology on cooking and cuisine. Since my father lived in, you know, in the Naples area and was born on the ocean, it's going to be all, you know, seafood-based dishes, which I totally enjoy. So definitely stay tuned for that. This pan is getting to the point where it's a little bit on the crispy side for me to continue. So I'm going to go ahead and switch pans. I'm going to steal a little bit of that oil, just a little. This one is spent. And the reason why I emphasize changing that out, it's like if I'm doing like a Parmesan where I'm breading and light frying like either chicken or a veal or even eggplant, I only use the oil for one set at a time. You don't have to soak the thing totally in oil. If they're a ½ inch thick, I'll use 1/8 of an inch worth of oil in the pan to do it. But that oil will change the flavor of everything, the consistency, the actual crispiness, and everything else. So I'll get that oil new each time. I'll put it into a dump pan. I'll rinse it hot, get it wiped down, make sure there's no water left over in the pan. Get it back on the stove, add a little bit of the extra virgin high temperature oil or however you're doing it in the Bertolli's, and then basically refry your set so that it gives it consistent across the multiple pieces. So that's just a key thing. I don't care what you're frying. So fish I do similarly, like if I'm doing a fish fry or anything along those lines, you know, I don't use the same oil for shrimp or fish or anything else. I'll have separate ones to do it, and I can only use it for so much because I want that fish to be just perfect. Another thing to take into consideration when you're cooking is just keeping your gear clean. In between sets of meats or whatever else, typically I don't even prep meat at the same sink that I prep vegetables and tomatoes and stuff like that. So I did it for theatrics. It just makes it easier for the camera guys to get in on what we're doing, but just making sure everything's clean. Again, even if I'm grilling, you know, I'm grilling in between sets halfway in, I change the, I call these pinchers, by the way, so I know that that's not what they are, but I'll change these midstream, and then right before the end, I'll use a clean set. Chicken is imperative to keep in a great amount of hygiene as you're cooking and everything else. You can cook them together, but I'll always start chicken just a little bit ahead of the meats, and just to kind of get that, keep that separation in the grilling. But hygiene is a good thing as you're going along. It just keeps everything high and tight. So it's just how I do it. You do it however, but just a little advice, little suggestions here and there. Raise that temp just a little bit. Adding a little vine ripe tomato always goes a really long way. It's just something I like to do. They just smell wonderful, you know, good, nice vine ripe. I won't use all these today, but I'll use a few in my dish. And we'll go ahead and get these peeled off here. You know, using a fresh tomato is nice, but it also raises the acidity level, and I'm gonna show you how to get by that too as the dish progresses along. I'm gonna go ahead and get these tomatoes cut up. Typically I'll use the puree, but I'll use like maybe 1 can of crushed, maybe 2, depending on the density of the, how you want the texture to be with the sauce itself. One of my aunts made a specific dish. It was called, I think it was called tripe, which is actually a similar type of red sauce, but it was done with the cow's stomach lining. And apparently it's supposed to be like the best thing since sliced bread. I would never eat it because it was just like, it's cow lining of a stomach. But nevertheless, I'm going to try to attain this recipe so I can get it and maybe cook it for you. There was a lot of different dishes that they did, you know, from what I consider to be un-Italian dishes, like my Aunt Angie and also my mother made a beef stew. Oh, it makes my mouth water even thinking about it. I never captured that recipe, but I'm hoping I'm able to get the ability to get that recipe so I can give it a whirl for you. It was an amazing, amazing dish. It's a winter dish, just like the lentils. My mom would make lentil soup. She would make wedding soup. They would make pasta vazul of all different, you know, all different ways. And that was a dish that my father, it's like, I hated it because we ate it every day. I mean, every day. It was just like, it didn't matter what we had on the plate, it had to have a freaking bowl of pasta fasul to go with it. It got old, but you know, that kind of dish is kind of iconic to our family because all of them knew how to make it, my mother especially. I think she learned to make it from my father. So it was kind of neat, but we had it every day. It was like, geez. So like I was telling you, it takes a month of Sundays to get the parsley down to just the leafy section of it because the more stock you put in there, I believe it makes it bitter. So getting this down to this, you know, down to this texture and down to this leafy side takes a minute, but it's 100% worth it. Now we're going to go ahead and we're going to wash it very, 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 very well. Very well. Temperature of water is you're not going to use anything warm, just not super cold, icy cold either. But we're going to go ahead and we're going to saturate this. Like I said, nobody wants to bite into a little bit of sand while you're cooking. So go ahead and get me a pile of this, put it in the sauce. The rest of the parsley is going to go in with this garlic because it's going to be added to the meatball concoction that I put together here in just a few moments. Okay. All right, guys, it's time to go ahead and make our meatball mix. I think today we're going to go ahead and we have one package of beef, pork, and veal mix that we're going to go ahead and use amongst we got some, one package is 70-30, and the rest of them are going to be 80-20 mix. So two of the 70-30s and two of the organic 80-20 lean. And then of course one of the beef, pork, and veal that we're going to go ahead and cut in. And I'm gonna cut those meatballs with a chopped up 5-grain bread that I go ahead and mix with a little bit of milk. It makes them so tender, makes them so good. So we're gonna go ahead and get that prepped. And again, so many different 5-grain breads out there, but the one at Publix, I gotta give them kudos. I've never been able to find another bread that tastes like that. So I typically get it fresh, cooked the same day. And then of course it also makes a great piece to test the sauce as you go, dipping a little bit of the bread as you go to see what it needs or what it doesn't have. Again, Parmigiano cheese in the big block. Not all cheeses are created equal. I like to get the ones that are completely off the wheel. You know, the ones that are in the deli section, they're okay, but they never taste the same. So typically if either, you know, your local grocery store, Whole Foods, Fresh Market, Publix, you'll usually have the wheel. And it's, oh my God, it smells so wonderfully good. So, you know, getting some of this cheese, yeah, these knives should be able to cut through it just like that. We're gonna go ahead and grade some up for the actual, and of course I'm gonna cut a little slice for myself here to enjoy. Oh, sorry, I got a hole in my lip. Oh my goodness, that's so good, and it makes the dish. These things are a dream when it comes to, you know, cutting up or grating up the Parmigiana into a block. I'm gonna go ahead and drop 2 eggs in here. So for this amount of meat, I think 2 eggs would be ideal. All right, we're gonna set that aside. Add a little bit of milk to the bread mix that I have here, just a little bit to sop it up. Like I said, you don't have to go heavy on the milk or whatever you want to put in there, but it's just enough to create a little bit of a mixture here with this kind of density. We'll even add the breadcrumb to that as well. You know, a lot of breadcrumbs out there, but I've been using Progresso since I was a kid. So the Italian style breadcrumbs, you can make your own, you can buy whatever. This one here does the trick. This mixture I make gives the meatballs a unbelievable, and even sometimes I've even added a little bit of white rice to the meatballs. It gives it a unique texture and taste and everything else. I've done all different types of experimentations. I mean, this is one of those dishes that you could certainly morph into a recipe of your own. So we're gonna go ahead and start mixing this meat. You know, my mother was only a little over 4 feet tall, but she could like sling me across the room, or if she grabbed me by my shoulder or my arm, I know where she got her upper body strength. It was making meatballs. Because this is the most laborious thing between her making breads and that sort of stuff. She could barely see over the counter, but if I got out of line, that was it, dude. She would crush me. I'm surprised I have any ears left between getting dragged across by my ears or worse, but clearly I deserved every beating I ever gotten as a kid, and rightfully so. But my mom, I didn't get out of line a whole lot between wooden spoons, matchbox tracks, and just a good old twap. If I got out of line, I miss her, love her to death. She died way too young. Died way too young. So, and that's a funny thing is that between her siblings, they all died in the order that they were born. So my mother died first, and they're all dying from the youngest on up. And that's you know, there's two left. You know, I know that they're going to pass, and I miss them horribly. But it's how ironic to die in that order. My mother dying first, my Uncle Frank, Uncle Joe, Aunt Tony, and then of course there's Aunt Angie and Aunt Mary. So it's kind of weird, but anyway. Okay, we're going to introduce parsley. Yeah, there we go. Good stuff right here. Yeah, got to add the Parmesan. I'm going to go ahead and remove the meat. The next trick is to reduce the acid levels inside the sauce. You know, a lot of these times the tomatoes can create such an acidity. A lot of people are like, I ate sauce and I got heartburn, That could be the case, you know. Making it spicy doesn't give you heartburn, but the acidity levels basically from the tomatoes could raise it to the point where it's a little uncomfortable if you eat just a little too much. So I'm going to do the first neutralization. I'm going to use a Arm & Hammer baking soda, just a little bit, a couple times. As you'll watch, it's going to bubble up quite a bit, but it's going to neutralize that sauce, bringing out the flavors and everything else. Yeah, you see that bubbling? That's part of the neutralizing the acidity content, backing that off because it's high. I'll let that settle with the heat off for just a moment so I can roll these meatballs. You know, what was interesting is between, you know, my mother's siblings, each one of them made their sauce just a little bit differently. And it was always neat because you could, you know, I wonder if you could have lined them all up and we could have done like a taste test, but they all did it just a little bit differently, I think all in all, I got to say that my mother's and my Aunt Angie's was probably the best. You know, not just because it was mom, just, I don't know, maybe it was because it was mom, but Aunt Angie, she's the one who taught me how to cut it with wine. She would let me drink wine as she made it. Very, very cool aunt. She always was very easy to get along with. Clearly, it's in our DNA to make more food than anybody could eat, so we usually split this up when the sauce is done and cooled for one evening. We'll make a meal out of it, and then we'll split it up into like 4 different meals. You know, so there's so much you can do with it. Never goes to waste, really. Corvin is a great thing. It introduces argon gas into your bottle, because I don't like to crack a whole bottle just to take a little bit out. So it just makes it really, really nice. If you just want to have a glass of wine and you have a favorite bottle of wine, you don't have to totally cork it. It just makes it work really well. I've seen them at the restaurants and everything else. Boom. All right, we got our temperature back up, and we're going to go ahead and start introducing the meatballs. Okay. Start adding those to the outside end. And again, just being cautious, what I'll do is I'll just get to the bottom of the thing and I'll just kind of reciprocate that, that sauce just to kind of keep it stirred without disrupting the meatballs a whole lot, because they'll break apart for sure. In the meantime, they're going to cook. Okay? At this point, we're going to go ahead and introduce the lid for a few minutes and continue to go ahead and not boil, but needs to simmer for a bit. So we're at the point where we can go ahead and pair this with a pasta. It could be rigatoni, it could be fettuccine, it could be whatever you want really in all that reality, but today I'm going to go ahead and do a bucatini today. So I start out with a filtered water, which is very important when you're cooking, just like when you're making coffee. The pH level of your water is extremely important. I'll go ahead and I'll cut that water with just a little bit of olive oil to keep everything from sticking, and we're going to go ahead and prepare you a dish. I hope you're hungry. So with pasta, I typically like to stay a little bit on the al dente side. Not too soft, not too hard, but that's just a preference. I mean, you can cook your pastas or your riggies or however you wish, but a little bit of a bite to them is usually nice. So that's what we're going to aim for today. So now I'm going to go ahead and prepare the dishes, okay? At least how I would do it anyway. So one of each of the meats, which is a lot, but very, very good. Please sample. My grandfather's dish, the peasant dish. So thank you for tuning in today. We hope that you enjoyed this first edition of our cooking show on the Microtech blade and board. Definitely stay tuned. We have a lot of new content and a lot of new things, but we hope you've enjoyed, and if you get an opportunity to make any of these recipes yourself, do tell us about it, and like, share, and subscribe, and definitely check it out. Buon appetito. Hey everyone, we hope that you enjoyed this past episode on Blade and Board of my mother's dish, or my family side, dubbed the sauce. You know, it was a great experience going ahead to make this particular thing for you. I hope that you try to make this dish at some time for you and your family. But in any event, we'd love to hear your comments about the show and comments about what you'd like to see going forward. But if you're still hungry, we're going to talk about the next episode, which will air next week, and it's going to be on my father's dish. You know, my folks did a lot of neat cooking, and I figured we would bring you these particular dishes, but definitely stay tuned, because this one is definitely one to watch, and it's seafood based, so we'll see you then.